Okay, hello, everyone. We are back and we are at our last continent for our world tour of plant staples and where they grow and why they grow and our Eating Geographically series. So, we remember where we're at with this. We looked at North America and we looked at the land and the weather and the water and what grows best in North America. We did the same for South America. We traveled across the Atlantic Ocean over to Europe and we looked at what grows there. And we looked at Africa and Asia and what grows there. And now we're going to head down to the bottom right hand corner over here into Australia. And Australia is has a special place in my heart because I honeymooned in Australia about 20 years ago. And it's a beautiful, amazing place with beautiful, amazing people. And they don't have the culinary culture that, say, Europe might have, but they have their own special fun things. And we're going to look at some of them. So remember, I want you to remember what a staple food is. It's usually plant based and it makes up a large portion of a population's diet. Again, so interesting 50,000 edible plants on the planet, and just 15 of them make up 90% of our food. And so those 15 plants are called the staple plants. And I want you to remember that because they're very important. They make up all of the base for many of the foods that you see: corn and wheat and rice and potatoes. And we have various beans and grains and all kinds of things. These 15 plants make up 90% of our energy intake, our food intake in the world. So interesting. That's what staples are. Later, we're going to learn about meat staples, protein staples, and dairy staples. But for right now, we're looking at plant-based staples. So let's go to Australia and check it out. Let's always start with our world map here, down here at the bottom in the green. This is our world. We have our North America, we have our South America, we have our Europe, we have our Africa, we have our big land massive Asia, and right underneath that, with all of the black arrows, is Australia. Now, some of the animals that we know about Australia are kangaroos and koalas, and some of those cute little animals down there. And Australia is really well known for having cool accents and all kinds of different things. One other really interesting thing about Australia is that it's different from the rest of the continents because it's a country continent. So while in North America we have many different countries, I think it was 23 different countries in North America, the main ones being Canada, United States, and Mexico. And in South America, we have, I think, 13 different countries. In Europe, 43, 42 different countries, many different countries in Africa, and many different countries in Asia. In Australia, Australia is the country. The whole continent is one country. And so it's different that way. And that's why I gave you the flag here. This flag that you see at the bottom by the Australian island here is the Australian continent, is the Australian flag. And what's interesting about this is it has the same type of design as the American flag, with this corner, the one quarter of it being different than the other three quarters. For the American flag, we have our stars on a blue background, and then we have our red and white stripes. Here, this flag that's up here in the one quarter, this is the United Kingdom flag. And so Australia actually was started by the United Kingdom, and they sent some of their citizens and some of their convicts from their jails. They sent them down to Australia, and that's how Australia was populated. And so it used to be considered a colony of Great Britain, of the United Kingdom, which is in Europe, and they have a bit of their flag on the United Kingdom's flag on the Australian flag. So, anyways, I wanted to point that out because Australia is just a little bit different than other continents in that it's a country continent, all on its own. So, above the world map here, we have the island continent of Australia. It's huge. It's not very populated. Most of the population lives on the West Coast. Again, I wish you could see my pointer, but most of the population lives on the West Coast over here, close to the left-hand side or the right-hand side here. That's where you're going to see, maybe you've heard of Sydney, maybe you've heard of Cairns. All of these famous cities are here on the east coast of Australia. There is one city that's pretty well known named Perth on the west coast of Australia, but it's all the way over on the west coast. In the middle of Australia, you have a place called Ayers Rock. It's the biggest natural rock in the world. I've been there. I went there on my honeymoon, and it's a beautiful, magical, kind of serene, spiritual place and really lovely. So there's so many beautiful things about Australia. The people are amazing, and we're gonna get into the staples that you'll find here. So the staples are basically the wheat, like North America, and grains like Europe and some of the other areas. The land is desert and grassland. You don't have a lot of mountains there. You don't have any mountains really in most of Australia. In the middle of Australia, like I told you, there's this place called Ayers Rock. The indigenous name, the name that it was originally given by the Aboriginal people who are native to Australia, is called Uluru. And like I said, it's a very spiritual place and very neat place to visit if you get to Australia. What you have in the middle of Australia is this picture here of the red sand. It's called the Red Desert, and it's just a very very beautiful place to visit as well. Right there in the middle of Australia. And in a lot of the rest of Australia, you have the grasslands, the plains of Australia. You've heard of them. The weather there is dry and arid. So it's very dry and not a lot of water. And so, as you can imagine, you're going to have a lot of irrigation for the water. You're going to have dry land farming, which is different than, say, in the rice paddies of Asia, where you have very wet land farming. In Australia, there's not a lot of water, and they have to rely a lot on irrigation and, of course, rain as well. But like in Africa, Australia does not get a ton of rain either. When it does come, it comes um, in in seasonal spurts, and a lot of the staples that grow in Australia are going to have to survive in this kind of dry, arid atmosphere. So we get our wheats and our grains here, uh, desert and grassland, dry and arid weather, and they have to use a lot of irrigation and dry farming, which is different than like a rice paddy farming. It's very where the land will be very dry. So not a lot. There's not a lot of compared to some of the other areas of the world. There's not a lot of crops that come out of here. So, again, I wanted to show you a fun fact about some Australian food. There's this very special thing that's very typical Australian. It's called Vegemite, and it's the thick, dark, salty residue left at the bottom of beer barrels when they brew beer with various ingredients, with hops and all kinds of things. There's this little sediment that's left at the bottom of the beer barrel, and they use it as a spread on bread, like for breakfast, and it's very salty. And at first I thought it would be sweet. It kind of looks like Nutella to me. You know, I'm American. It looks like Nutella. It looks like hazelnut spread. But it's not that at all. It's a salty spread. And actually I really love salty foods. And so I don't mind it, but it takes some getting used to. It takes some getting used to for Americans usually. But it's a fun thing to try when you're trying new foods. Whenever you travel and you go to other areas of the world, try the local foods, try the special foods that are from that area. Refer back to these lessons to get an idea of what they are. Print out any of these slides that you want, and it's really fun to try the foods of different countries. Here's a little bit of a smattering of the different foods in the countries for breakfast. I show you here Vegemite up close. This is dark spread. Try it. I think you could probably get it here in the stores, or you could get it online probably. Really fun thing to try, though very, very typical Australian. So try it out. For lunch, a meat pie is a typical Australian lunch. Also dinner. I show you barbecue here. These things are interchangeable. Lunch and dinner in Australia is kind of the same. There's a lot of burgers, a lot of the same types of things in Australia as you'll see in North America or Europe, but a lot of meat in Australia as well. So I show you a meat pie and I show you some barbecue here. This for snacks, I show you this item here. If you're in America watching this, they said this looks like a hot dog on a piece of white bread, right? Which is basically what it is. It's a barbecued hot dog on a piece of white bread instead of like a hot dog bun, like we would have here in the United States. But in Australia, they call it a snag, which I just thought was cool. It's a cool word. I thought it was really fun. So they say, hey, instead of having like, hey, I'm gonna go get a hot dog for a snack, they say, I'm gonna go get a snag. So sometimes the items are the same or similar to other countries and they just have different names. The meat pie here is very similar to an empanada in South America, right? This one's in a bowl, but they have these in Australia as well where they are handheld, like they are in South America, like the empanadas are. So sometimes you have similar foods in different areas of the world, just called by a different name. And that's the deal here with the hot dog in the white bread. In Australia, if you say, "Hey, give me a snag," you're gonna get basically a hot dog. So for dessert, there's a famous type of dessert in Australia called a pavlova cake, and it's this white type of cake. It's made with like a meringue, which is egg whites that are beat until they're very fluffy. If you've ever had a lemon meringue pie, it's the white, fluffy topping on the lemon pie. But these are very popular in Australia and very typical Australian desserts. This pavlova, they're usually topped with berries, as you see here. And you can usually get a pavlova at most of the fancy restaurants in Australia, and it's just a very typically Australian dish. Now, we'll get into lots more detail on different foods in different countries in other courses. It's one of my favorite subjects, but here's just a little smattering of some foods in Australia. I wanted you to start to think about Australia as a country continent, like I mentioned at the beginning of this lesson. In Australia, there's 16 territories. So it's kind of like Canada in the sense that it has territories, and kind of like the United States in the sense of that we have states, they have 16 territories. So while it is one country, it is broken up into territories, just like the United States or Canada is. I show you a picture of barramundi fish here also. I wanted to show you some of these other pictures of barbecue for dinner because it's so popular in Australia. But one of the other very popular entrees for dinners or lunches is a fish called barramundi. And it's just a white fish. It's very similar to cod. It's very flaky, very neutral flavor, not very fishy. And it really takes on the flavor of whatever sauce it's being cooked in. But it's very popular there because barramundi is found in the waters of the Great Barrier Reef, which is a very famous reef in Australia that people love to scuba dive on. I scuba dived there when I was on my honeymoon, and it was one of the highlights of my life, really. This barramundi fish, you'll find that in a lot of restaurants in Australia as well. And then, of course, I couldn't leave you without giving you a picture of the sweet, cute koala bears. So there you have Australia. We have finished our world tour of plant staples. And now you have an idea all over the world of why geography matters, why certain things grow better in certain areas, why the base of a lot of the population's diets may be rice instead of wheat, or maybe beans instead of, say, potatoes. And it all overlaps, and the world is a very big place. But this gives you an idea to start to think about how weather matters, how the land matters, how the water matters, and how all of these plant-based staples grow, and how important they are to the world and to the population and to humanity on how we feed ourselves and how we sustain ourselves. So we want to take care of all of these plants and all of these staples, and all of these things grow. So it goes back to where we started, which is that all of our food comes from the earth and it comes from growing. And all of the animals that we end up eating as well, they all eat food that comes from the ground and from the earth, and all of these staples as well. So this is just a really important part of food if we're learning about food. We're going to stick with staples in the next lesson, and we're going to talk about meat. We're going to talk all about the protein staples in the next lesson. So I love having you here. I love going around the world like this. And we're going to learn a little bit more about staple foods. And then we're going to take another tour around the world and see what our friends are eating for breakfast, lunch, and dinner in other countries. All right. I will see you in the next lesson.